Before we start this show, just a word from our sponsor, 20 by 20 Apparel. Founded in 2015, 20 by 20 Apparel brings original tributes to pro wrestling's classic arenas, moments, and events. They look to spotlight the bloopers, bleeps, and body slams along with the biggest, smallest, strangest, and strongest that pro wrestling has had to offer. Along with their awesome line of pro wrestling apparel, they do offer many services. In the world of wrestling, there are hundreds of shirts, promotions, flyers, social media accounts, and ads. Don't get lost in the sea of parody shirts and display fonts. They can provide professional graphic design services at a reasonable price. 20 by 20 also hand screen prints all the tees in-house. If you would like to discuss possible run of tees, posters, koozies, foam fingers, or whatever, drop them a line. Go to 20 by 20 Apparel. That's the number 20x, the number 20 apparel.com. Now, let's get to the show.
Fresh is the word.
I'm Jim Duggan, got long wood for plenty hoes. I keep it fresher than fresh, but you already know. You suckers bummy, I'm money, I got a ton of flows. My weed loud like a motherfucking thunder roll. Your shit quiet like you ballin' on a budget though. We see your kicks and we laugh and yellin' what are those. You see me shining like a suit on puffy. You know my grindin' shit is too strong, buddy. That's why the dude call money. I be stuntin' like it's nothing at all. Cause it's nothing to me, it's probably something to y'all. Trying to smoke like me, then come and fuck with your dog. Got a closet full of kicks, you can't cop it tomorrow. And I'm fresher than the freshest, you can tell it's in my essence. Bitch, you see the way I'm rapping, yes I do this shit to death. Until I'm running out of breath, or tell somebody cut a check. But either way you know it's fresh, and either way you know it's fresh. Fresh, we fresh. Fresh, fresh, goddammit, we fresh.
Welcome to the Fresh is the Word podcast. I'm your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier. And on Fresh is the Word, we like to deliver wisdom through great stories from the minds of bright creatives of pop culture. Through those stories, we like to dissect the journey of our guests and present action artist and writer Lynn Smith. This week, Smith, along with Dirk Manning, launched the Kickstarter campaign for their 6th issue superhero graphic novel, HOPE, that they co-created. Smith was known for a previous comic, the Western Plume, that garnered much attention after its webcomic beginnings. During our conversation, we talked about the HOPE Kickstarter and the story behind doing a superhero comic with Manning, her beginnings as a writer and artist, turning her work into a job, the importance of keeping up with her network with other creatives, what she's learned by doing comics, the role of women in the comic book industry, and working Comic-Cons. Before we get into this interview with Lynn Smith, I definitely want to give a shout out to Knox Money, Bang Belushi, and Foulmouth for the theme music for Fresh is the Word. And I just want to remind you how you can support the podcast. You can always go to freshasthepodcast.com and share any links to any of the episodes on any of your social media platforms. And you can also, if you have anything that you want to send me, you can email me at djkfresh@gmail.com. And also, if you want to subscribe to Fresh is the Word, you can pretty much go to anywhere where podcasts are streamed. That includes Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, pretty much anywhere. And a rating and review would go a long way also in helping to build the popularity of the show. And also, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at KFreshIsTheWord and on Facebook at facebook.com/KFresh. You can follow Fresh is the Word online at Twitter at Fresh is the Word, and that's is with IZ. Instagram at Fresh is the Word Podcast, and on Facebook at facebook.com/FreshIsThePodcast. And on another note, I am currently setting up a Patreon account that will have all sorts of tiers, including I'm going to crack open my interview audio archives from interviews that I did when I was writing some articles for Real Detroit and Huffington Post, among other places. And also there will be tiers to where you can either contribute to the podcast or even be on the podcast. So I'm not sure when that's going to launch, but it's going to launch very soon. If you want to help out, it would any dollar would count. with helping out with the show and my creative endeavors. So be on the lookout for the Fresh is the Word, the K-Fresh Patreon accounts coming soon. All right, let's get into the interview with Lynn Smith. Start things off. You have the HOPE comic book that you're starting to do a Kickstarter for. You already did a pretty much a independent run of the first issue, which I have, and I really enjoyed it. It was a comic that you co-created with Dirk Manning, and also it's that first issue is gonna be a part of the free comic book day via SourcePoint Press. Kind of talk about what the comic is about, and what we have in store for this Kickstarter that's coming up.
Yeah, so Hope is, for Dirk and for me, is the first time we've ever dabbled into the superhero genre. So we are definitely playing in someone else's playground, it feels like. But yeah, Hope is about a mother who moonlights as a superhero, and one tragedy just blows the whole secret out of the water. And it's just kind of how society reacts to her as, a mother and as a superhero. So it's kind of a dark, realistic look upon the superhero genre. And yeah, it's been fun trying to break that mold a little bit.
Right. What's the Kickstarter gonna be?
Yeah, so we're launching well, I guess if this goes live afterwards, we have launched. We're aiming for the first volume, so it's going to be the first 6 issues of Hope, and it's pretty brutal. I'm currently working on the art right now, but all scripts have been drafted, and yeah, we're pretty excited about it. And then the Kickstarter is going to offer other free or other good little add-ons like enamel pins and maybe additional extra pages in the book. We're just trying to keep it pretty simple, but we're just aiming for that hardcover first volume.
I've talked with Dirk in the past about how how you guys came up with Hope. He basically said that he's always had this idea in his mind to do this comic book, but he couldn't find the right person until he kind of met you, and kind of things kind of came together. Kind of talk about how you guys came together to do this comic book Hope.
Yeah, he pitched it to me actually at one of the shows, Heroes Con actually. He's like, are you going to be free for a new project? And I have this project that I've been sitting on, and he pitched it to me, and I thought it was a really interesting idea. It kind of hit the long lines of Incredibles a little bit. And I love that series. Well, the movie, but it was kind of a click for me as well. I mean, I kind of jumped on board immediately after he sent me the first draft. And then since then, he's asked if I would help him map out the rest of the story. So we do bullet points at the beginning of every issue, and, kind of talk it out. And then he goes off and writes it, and then hands it off to me to draw and color. So it's a very collaborative project, and I enjoy that immensely, that he's willing to hear me out on this baby that he's been sitting on for so long. So
seeing that this is both of you guys' kind of foray into superhero comics, how is it different than anything they've done in the past?
I don't think it's too terribly different. I was actually pretty nervous coming into it, because I know, obviously superheroes are, that's the comic world. And I was afraid to, make a misstep or, treat this poorly, or I don't know, someone would have some kind of negative reaction to it. But we have treated it very, we just went into it wanting to create a really dramatic story with the superhero kind of on the back burner of it. So it's a human story, and then it's a superhero story. So we kind of addressed it that way. So it's not terribly different from any projects that we've done before, especially with Dirk, because, he's a horror writer, and it's still a pretty horrific story. So I would say it's not terribly different. I at first thought it would be, but it feels pretty at home for us so far.
How would you describe the stuff that you did before? Because I know you had a kind of like your own project with Plume.
Well, Plume definitely was that hobby on the side that turned into a job, and so I was just kind of doing Plume for funsies, and it just like rolled into this now. I started posting online as a web comic, and then people started reaching out, and I was watching the audience grow more and more on the website, and bringing it to print. It was mind blowing that people actually wanted to spend money on something that they could get for free online. So Plume, it was that launching point where it was like, I'm telling a story that I love, that I don't have to answer to anybody. I'm just creating the story the way I want to do it. And and now here I am, working with other people, which is just great. So, I guess Plume is the training wheels is how I would describe it. It's a job now, but it's still a hobby. I still find great passion in it.
What was it about Plume that resonated so well with people?
I'm character driven. I love creating characters that are funny but flawed, and I know that people just related with Vesper and with Korik. They were out to do their best, but sometimes it just wasn't good enough. And I think people really responded to my characters.
Kind of, going back, when did you first sort of get the itch to, want to be this creative person who was, an artist and a writer?
I've been drawing ever since I could remember. And then writing too. A lot of my friendships were based on writing. Like I would pass a notebook back and forth between one of my friends, and we would just expand on a story. And that's just how we built our friendship, which I'm friends with her still to this day. So 20 years almost. But I've been writing and drawing as far as I can remember. Going to college, I went to school originally for graphic design. So I thought I would get an actual office job. But then I saw this ad in the newspaper for a weekly comic artist for the university newspaper, and I started doing that, and I fell in love with it. And that's when I switched majors to animation, and so I thought I was going to be an animator. And so as I was, going through school, I kind of started drawing a comic on the side, which was Plume, to keep myself, doing art every day and to, sharpen those skills. And then, that's where it started to grow. I thought I was going to be at Disney animating, but I'm glad that dream died. So, this is the world I'm supposed to be in.
Right. Like, kind of like paths to graphic design or animation. Those are like jobs. Those are like careers that a lot of people in this field sort of set out to, just like to be able to sort of, that's kind of like the safer route, the thing to sort of pay the bills. That could actually happen. But, did you ever have any inclination that this other thing, that you're doing would ever be something that you could turn into a job?
No, I mean, going through school, like I was aiming to work for a company of one way or another. I never thought I would be my own brand, my own business, working through, all these different publishers and contract work. I never thought that would be a possibility. But like I said, when I launched Plume online, I watched the audience grow. And then that first Kickstarter that I launched on my own was like hugely successful. I was like, wait a minute. Okay, maybe I can do this route. And I'm glad I started exploring the webcomic genre for sure.
Was that sort of like the time when you realized, screw it, like this could be my career, and when you kind of like, or do you still not even, feel that way?
Yeah, it's kind of standing on shaky ground. You're waiting for it to give out. You're waiting for the projects to stop landing on your doorstep. But I mean, if you're ever comfortable in your career, then that's when it's going to start to die. Yeah, you always have to be out there hustling, and you always have to be there, pushing your brand. So it is a weird world to be in, but it's exciting and it keeps you on your toes.
How do you deal with that sort of feeling of that shaky ground?
A network, gather your people around you. Going to the shows, talking to people, knowing that you're not alone in the fear that you have. And then, making connections. So when the well does dry up, you have, other sources to pull from. So far it's been great. A lot of projects have come my way. I've even had to say no to some. But yeah, saying I can't do it now, but I can do it later, just, keeping the door open and yeah, getting to know as many people as you can in this field is the way to go.
Being in your position, how do you sort of balance all those different sources? Like when you say when the well runs dry in one thing that you have something else, how do you balance all of that?
Whew. Making a list, keeping myself as organized as possible, which is very hard for me because I am a very, those artistic types. We're kind of scatterbrained a little bit. But I have, Post-it notes and lists of contacts all around my desk right now. I'm looking at them right now. So I'm trying to remain as organized as possible. Yeah, it's a mess, but it's organized mess.
Do you, in some way, keep in touch with all your contacts to a certain extent from all those different avenues?
Yes, because it's the contacts are basically the Comic-Con circuit. So it's you see people constantly in your travels,
Right.
and all the networking events and everything like that. Just touching base with everybody face to face is great. So yeah, it's always a refresher when we go to Comic-Cons, just kind of rebuild the connections for sure.
Yeah, that's something that I've really noticed since I started going to the Comic Cons and talking with people like Dirk Manning and other people. Is that everybody kind of there's a community of creatives. How important is it to have that sort of community of creatives that you do see at the Comic Cons, and then sometimes you might not see, but how important is it to continue to create that community?
I think it's hugely important. All the projects that have hit me have been from, other people who have suggested, someone will come across someone wanting an artist that has, they're asking for a certain style and they're like, oh, well, I know, so-and-so who has this kind of style. So, we're always looking out for each other. Or if I get offered something, I'm like, I can't do it, but I have someone else in mind that could, it's always, watching out for each other. So that network is hugely important for sure.
Do you feel like there's ever any competition between artists, or is it just everybody's pretty supportive?
Oh, it's pretty supportive. If you're competing with somebody, then you're doing it wrong. Because if your success brings more readers into the world, then then it will help my book as well. So it should never be viewed as a competition. We should always be pulling each other up, because there's so many different styles and stories and viewpoints. I don't think you ever really would compete. I did a Western comic. There's so many Western comics out there now, so it's never a competition. It's I may have introduced somebody to the Western genre who never liked it before, and now they're out reading other Western books. So, it has to be, a group effort.
How much of yourself, do you put into the projects that you're a part of?
Quite a bit. More so than I realized until someone pointed it out to me. Which doesn't say a lot about myself, because some of my characters are just rough. Like with my main character Vesper in Plume, I was at a con and I said something and they're like, wow, you sound just like Vesper. And I'm like, okay, all right. Or, Tegan is like so raunchy and, she says some pretty risque stuff. And then I'll say something. I'm like, oh, there's Tegan. So yeah, it's kind of, you can't help it. Putting your little piece of yourself in your characters, which is the fun part. But, it's coming from some part of your brain. So it just can't be helped. Yourself just seeps in.
Right. Kind of extending on that, is there anything about yourself that you learned through, making these comics?
Yeah. Being flawed, is okay. One, the characters being flawed, but two, the artwork or, building the story, there are happy accidents that happen all the time that could morph the story completely. And you never would have even imagined it in the beginning. So I've learned that, you kind of have to go with the flow and just embrace, the growing of the project, if that makes any sense.
Right, right.
With Plume, when I first started mapping it out, it was nothing like what it ended up being. It's just kind of have to embrace the change in artwork and in story. So yeah, I learned that I can't be so strict. I have to, be a little more loosey-goosey.
Right. In these titles like Hope or Plume, you do have these women characters that are the centerpiece of the stories. What's your idea, what's your idea of sort of the representation of women in comics these days? Do you feel like that women are being written better these days? And is there any times where you feel like maybe you can tell that a man's written this woman character? Where do you feel like the representation of the women character is in comic books these days?
I did give Dirk a little bit of hell about this because he's writing a comic about a woman who is a mother, and I'm like, okay, what gives you the right? But he actually writes women pretty well. I have had to reel him back a little bit from, Hope losing all sense completely.
Right.
Like, dude, okay, stop making her cry. But I think the industry is getting way better. There are still some, questionable materials out there. For instance, women do not arch their backs when they pick up something. I've never done it, nor have I fallen with my ass up in the air or anything of that nature. Am I allowed to swear? Because I just did. But no, I feel that, it's very important. I didn't write Vesper as, in my brain going, oh, she's a girl. No, I just wrote her as a character who, lost family and now she's on this quest for revenge. Like her being a female, nothing, never had anything to do with it. And I think that's why, or that's how to write a strong female character, is just to kind of forget that she's a female and just give her, this personality and this drive, although often I won't name names, but there's different series that will write a woman who is, loves to have sex with all these men, who drinks, who belches, who, takes her clothes off at a whim. And it's like, oh, she's a strong female character. I'm like, no, she's written as a complete man.
Right.
So there's a fine line. Like sometimes you can go a little too far with writing a quote unquote strong female character. But yeah, I think, it's gotten way better, and, it's a changing atmosphere constantly for sure. So it's refreshing, to come across a writer like Dirk Manning, not to toot his horn because he toots it for himself, but, but it is refreshing to see a guy, write a really good female character.
And you kind of mentioned this when you were explaining that. How do you sort of balance the idea of, writing an authentic, strong woman character against not even thinking about that character being a woman?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, with Vesper, she was told throughout the comic that, you can't do this. You're a girl. And she's like, what does that even mean? Like, step out of my way kind of deal. It's just writing a well-rounded character, who fails and who gets back up and goes again. And, yeah, that's a tough question. I don't know the difference between the two.
Right. In Hope, what do you feel? What do you eventually want the reader to get out of reading this comic book?
The strength and family. It's hugely centered around that. It's a view between what's, bad versus evil, and, what makes a bad person evil and what makes a bad person, change their ways. And, and then addressing the actual good, quote unquote, character, and, how far they will go for family, and whether or not, it would, taint her character. We wanted to really bend and blur the line between good and evil. And if someone was pushed far enough, like how far, if they have this kind of power, is it good to use it, or, should you step back from it? It's really a psychological view on, if this situation was to happen in reality, like how it would play out. So yeah, the center focus is how far would you go for family?
Yeah, in Hope, like sort of the general public doesn't necessarily have warm feelings for these superhero type characters that are in their world. How does that parallel real life these days?
Yeah, I mean, like I don't want to compare rich people to the ultras, but I mean the rich have all these opportunities. They don't have the worries of the lower class, and and then obviously the rich are viewed pretty poorly among the majority of the population because they have the power. So yeah, I mean that's where ultras come in, is that they have the power, and these the lower class is scared of them. They can do things that the others can't, and they could severely hurt other people without realizing it. And you're scared of what you don't know, and these ultras are definitely a mystery to them.
Do you, with this ultra character, these superheroes, and you don't need to spoil anything in the for the book already, but is there, will there be a point when people need to sort of, try to understand where these people are coming from because they are trying to do good for the world?
Yes. The issue hasn't been written yet, but we have, Dirk and I have been talking about that aspect. There is actually, it's been touched upon a little bit with with one of the issues in the first volume. With the ultras, like they have to be registered under the government to be able to do this, to go out and fight evil. And if they're not, then they're illegal ultras, and that is a huge, no. So there is like this world that's trying to regulate them, and that comes into play. But I don't want to say any more because I don't want to give away anything else.
Right.
Dirk is going to muzzle me.
Hold it back.
Yeah.
In stories like this, because you often hear similar stuff in other superhero comic books, you'll have like kids that are characters in these books, look up to these superhero types, whereas like we already kind of touched upon, the humans or like the adults will, kind of feel afraid or have like lukewarm feelings for these superheroes. Why is it, why is it like the kids always have this sort of clear, minded admiration for these superheroes?
Well, it's something that they can grow up to be too. I mean, and kids are just so innocent and naive, that they see this, this person as something they can strive to be, and adults are so jaded. We know, and I guess the adults miss their chance to become this superhero. I guess I don't know. It's just kids are so innocent and wonderful that they could hardly see anything negative, really. But that's interesting because in Hope, that's not terribly the situation. But again, I won't tell you any spoilers.
Right. When you're writing, books like Hope, books like Plume, anything else that you've been a part of, you're a part of Afterglow that was written by Pat Shan. What is it about comic books, especially the stuff that you've been a part of, that really resonates to the readers out there? Why do these universes exist?
As a whole, or as my work?
As a whole, but relating to your work.
It's just creating all these, if you look at Afterglow, it's a girl with a giant mutant cat, and then you go to Hope, which is a mother superhero, and then you go to Plume, which is a Western with this magical fantasy world. It's a huge scope of different worlds that you can escape into, and these characters are different from each other, and they have their own problems to overcome and adventures, and it's so amazing. The world is just, every week we have a new comic coming out, and a new world to explore. And in my body of work, that is just absolutely fascinating to me, is the characters, creating the adventures, and then creating the expressions on their faces and how they react to different situations like that. I just eat it up. I love it so much. So yeah, I think it's just, it's an escape for me drawing it, and for people who are reading it.
When you're at Comic-Cons and people are coming up to your table, what are some of the things that you're talking with them about?
A lot of times, there are aspiring artists that come to the shows, and they want to talk to you about their own art, which is awesome. I've had people come up and slap down a comic on my table and say, "Hey, I created this because of you." That just floors me. I love it so much. So connecting with, artists and future comic book artists, and, that's a percentage of it. And another percentage is just, avid fans and readers, and other people who just want to discover a new book. And I just love, Comic-Con, because it's all these people who are loving the same thing under one roof, and it's a good time. It really is a good time.
What's, if there's any aspiring artists, either listening to this or when you're at those Comic-Cons, what are some of the, advice that you're giving out to people?
Just do it. I sat on, whether or not I should do a webcomic for a while. I even started it, then stopped, and then, rethought it, kept second guessing myself. With, the day and age of it being everything digital, webcomics is such an easy way to break into the industry. Just start creating a story, start posting, start pushing it through social media, and, all the webcomic sites like, Tapastic and Webtoons and all those sites that are readily available and free. It's so easy. I say easy with, a grain of salt, but
right.
it's so easy to start,
Yeah.
So, just mapping out a small story and testing the waters by posting that, is a huge thing. Just do it. Just start it. Stop beating around the bush. That's my advice.
Right. And kind of extending on that, what is something, a nugget of knowledge that comes from, coming from your life or career that anybody listening to this podcast, whether they're a comic book writer, artist or not, or in a totally different artistry as a whole, that they could sort of project onto their own life?
Like I said earlier, like making connections. I think that's really important. Going to Comic-Cons and approaching artists at a table while being respectful of their time too. We're there to sell, but we love talking to, aspiring artists. But yeah, getting yourself out there and, talking to different artists, and figuring out their own story, how they got started, what the artist can do to improve their work. And yeah, just getting yourself out there and networking and expanding that circle of creatives.
Yeah, something you just said, being respectful. What is the do's and don'ts of being respectful with an artist?
Yeah. So I love looking at portfolios, but I only have, a certain amount of time before someone else comes up to my table. And so, when you want to show off your artwork, that's great. Make a portfolio, but don't make it a massive thing. Make
Right.
it, make it like maybe 10 pages long, so they can be flipped through very quickly. I have had a binder that someone, put down on my table that shook the whole table, that it was so heavy. And, you want to go through it, but you can't possibly go through the whole thing. And, having to stop in the middle and going, that's great, and hand it back is it's a little awkward. So, be respectful of their time, make your pitch at, 10 minutes at most, and then, move on. But again, I love seeing people's work, but yeah, just the portfolio needs to be toned down just a little.
Right. And how do you deal with, doing the Comic-Con circuit when you're talking to so many people for 2, 3, 4 days straight? How do you sort of deal with that from like just a health aspect, a mental health aspect?
Alcohol. No, I'm just kidding. Or am I? No, it's really tough. Because it's a long day and you are on the whole time. And I'm a very low energy person, which, Dirk Manning is a very small dosage. Oh my gosh, he's a very high energy, and a day with him, I'm like at the end just dragging ass. And you could tell him that.
Right. And a lot of times you're right next to him, so.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He is like constantly going, and I'm like slumped unconscious in my chair. It's awful. But yeah, it's a long day, and you're talking to so many people. It's just, you definitely have to walk away from your table for just a little bit, grab something to eat, get a drink, water, and then, just kind of regroup and then come back. But it's long. It's a long day, and go to bed early. Yeah. Despite everyone wanting to party,
You mean you don't do the karaoke with Dirk after?
Oh gosh, don't even get me started on karaoke. Oh my goodness gracious. I am the one that wants to huddle in a corner and drink and just make fun of the singers. I do not want to be up there. So if he always like pushes me to sing, and I am not about that life.
Did he ever succeed in getting you up there?
I got up there once, and it was to sing Sir Mix-a-Lot, Baby Got Back, and it was. And let me tell you, it was not good.
Outside of doing all your comic book work, what other things do you like to do in your spare time? What sort of things that you do just to have fun or decompress?
I love photography. I actually used to have a business called Fresh Image, which I was like, oh, your podcast is very close to it.
Right.
So I used to do that, but now it's just a hobby, which I absolutely love. Doing photography as a business was the tits. Or not in a negative way. Yeah, I love doing photography. I love traveling. Even with the shows, like the cons, like, yeah, it's a business travel, but I love exploring the cities and seeing new places. And gosh, what do I do that it's on the side that's not drawing or writing? Gosh, yeah, I am constantly writing and drawing. It's like I like to, watch Netflix, I like to read. But yeah, if I'm not in front of my iPad or my computer, then I go a little stir crazy, to be honest.
I had this discussion with actually a pro wrestler that I interviewed recently, and he was talking about traveling and how like a lot of wrestlers would be like, I've been to all these places, but I never seen this. I only like see the airports and the venue, but he's like, I see the places that I go to. I make sure I see the places that you go to. How do you go about that when you're traveling to all these different cities for the Comic Cons? How do you sort of carve out the time to see the city that you're in?
Yeah, I mean, with load-ins, sometimes we get the day before to load in our stuff, so that's great. So I usually try to get there a day or two early, and so that when I load in, then I'm like done and I can go and explore. And then, it just after the show, you want to go to dinner or something, so you get to see the city at night at least. But yeah, carving out just a little time before the show begins is great, and then. Rarely I have any time after the show. It's usually like I fly out pretty quickly, but yeah, the day before is usually the time where I can explore the city.
How does carving out that time to explore the cities that you're in sort of make the travel better?
Oh, because you get to get a sense of the city and the life and the people and yeah, just, getting to see the area that you're in before you are talking face to face with the public at the show. It's, you get a good overall feeling of the area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. What's some of the cities that you like to travel to the most?
Oh, gosh. I gotta say Kansas City, Planet Comic-Con is one of my favorite shows, and Kansas City is like the best barbecue you will ever have.
Oh, okay.
So I enjoy that city quite a bit. Seattle with Emerald City Comic-Con, which is just around the corner.
Okay.
I enjoy Seattle quite a bit too. I mean, those hills kill me, but besides that, yeah, Seattle is a great city to explore. And then the convention center itself is pretty city center where everything, it's only a short walk away from the cool shops. And that's a really fun city to explore.
Great. Yeah, before we get out here, I always like to end my interviews with the same question. And that question is, who is somebody that's been a part of your life or career that I could realistically interview for this podcast that would have some good stories or lessons to talk about?
Well, I'd have to say Dirk Manning, but I mean, he's already in your roster. So I would have to say, Travis McIntyre, who's, the head honcho of Source Point Press.
Okay.
I think he'd be a great person to interview since his company is making huge strides into expanding beyond the horror genre. Like they're moving up quick, and they're taking a chance on Hope. Hope is the first superhero genre that they've ever signed up for. So, and then them getting us on the free comic book day too. They've really pushed this title, and they're doing great things for us and for other creators. I think Travis would be a great person to reach out to. All
right, great. It's been great interviewing you. Nice. It was great to talk with you. Where can people go online to get more information about you and Hope and anything else that you've been working on?
Yeah, so my main site is kaylynsmith.net. You can find me on the Twitters at Kaylyn Tweets. And then don't ask, but my Instagram is Handmade Crown.
Great. It's been good talking with you. Good luck with everything. And like we talked about, go support the Hope Kickstarter.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Find Hope on Kickstarter. It's volume 1.
All right, great. It's been great talking with you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.
No problem. All right, that was my interview with Kaylin Smith. All the information to where you can go contribute to the Hope Kickstarter is in the show notes for this episode at freshasthepodcast.com. All right, that's another show in the books. Thank you for listening. Goodbye and good night.
Fresh is the word.